Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are tuning in from. I believe in UK, it's afternoon for you guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So let's see here. All right. So we're going to get this started. And if you are new here, who you are hearing right now is is Indigo, our dove. If you do hear any cooing, if you also hear any opera singing or anything like that, we do have a parrot. Her name is Julia. So we have a regular, quite literally jungle here in the house. If you do hear any fun background sounds, that's what's happening. Oh, perfect. Paulette says she loves the, the cooing. Great. I'm always like, great, of course. He starts to coo as soon as I start teaching. So he's usually very quiet. And as soon as I start, it's like his cue. So glad you find it entertaining. So thank you so much for tuning in. There we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are officially kicking it off on Zoom, much desired, right? And I definitely hope that you find this platform much more appealing, much more user friendly. It's set to be the exact same Zoom link every week. So if you do have the direct link, you can click on that every week to tune in. You can also, there is that option to also sign up and it'll just remind you every week. The plan is to send everyone access to the replays as well via email and also post the replays in the community Facebook group. So if you are on Facebook, we do have a group on there and the replays will be on there, any updates, things like that. If you happen to be on that platform, I hope that you'll find some interesting content on there and connect with other plant people. So please introduce yourselves in the community group. Definitely let me know where you're from, what got you into plants, maybe how many house plants do you have? Many of you might have joined into my other classes. So I also teach classes on subjects like botany or herbalism. Maybe you've joined in on a plant walk in the past. I lead several plant walks here all around New York City. So I know many of you have found your way here through different avenues, right? Many of you might have come from the original houseplant class, right? On Webinar Jam. So please know that I'm very happy and appreciative that you're tuning in and you want to continue to learn about houseplants. And excited to share all these new updates with you, especially my company, Urban Garden. I founded this company several years ago with my husband. It's been a joy. We've been offering classes, workshops, trainings, and there's just so much going on. And definitely having everything under one umbrella on Zoom, especially, I think is just a better way to streamline everything. And my goal is to make it as simple and no stress, no more frustration. So I'm really hoping to do that. So thank you so much. So this is now being offered under our learning series umbrella. And I wanted to also, there's like a new format too. I'll be switching between these kind of overall topics. So it's not a class, right? Every single week it's, hey, we'll have a class and then we can have a Q&A hour where you can go ahead and ask me any houseplant related question. Then also plant clinics. So that's a new thing that I think a lot of you might enjoy, where we'll be on Zoom and I can send out a sign up sheet a week before, and it's going to be first come, first serve. And I'll see if maybe the time will allow for anywhere from like 10 to 15 people. And then what we'll do is we'll go around and folks can share a plant that they have a current issue with. They can give us a little bit of a background on the plant, and then we can address those concerns. I can give my advice. Others can go ahead and also tune in. Maybe they have experience with that plant. So I think it'll be a cool way to crowdsource a lot of great advice too. So we'll be having plant clinics, and I think it's a great learning experience too. I'm really excited about that. And then we'll also have open forum days where it's laid back. It's just going to be an open chat. And it's just like discussions. Maybe we can have special guests on those days. Maybe you yourself have a great collection. Maybe you have a euphorbia collection and you want to actually show everyone my euphorbia collection and things like that. So it'll be like open format and everyone, we can go with the flow and see what happens. But I feel like it'll be a nice, yet another nice way to connect with everyone. So excited about these offerings. And of course, there are going to be classes too, formal classes. But I think just getting more connected to you, I think, is the goal. And now I'm happy that on Zoom, I do have that option. Of course, you do not have to turn on your camera by any means. But if you do, it's great because then I can see who I'm connecting with. So thank you. Thank you so much. And again, as I mentioned, if you're just tuning in, because I'm seeing some folks are just tuning in, if you do hear any cooing or singing or anything like that, we have our little flock here. So you might hear them. So that's what's going on. And I thought we'd kick off today's session talking about preparing yourself for your houseplants, things to consider when you're getting into the houseplant hobby, if you are coming in as just a beginner. But this is also true when you're trying to grow your collection, right? Maybe you have a handful of plants that are doing relatively well in your care. Maybe they are flourishing. You're like, okay, I am good with snake plants. All my snake plants are doing wonderfully. They're growing like crazy. Happy. I want more. So these kind of tips and tricks are just a way of like self-assessment. So I wanted to kind of kick off with that. And so please feel free to put questions in the chat. I'll definitely be addressing everything. I hope that it's informative. So understanding your care profile. I think this is one of the most important things. Sometimes I think we need to really assess ourselves. What kind of person am I in regards to my scheduling? Am I someone that travels a lot? Maybe I work long shifts, right? I'm not home all the time. So I can't be on top of my plants. I need something that's really low maintenance, that I can just enjoy. I don't need to fuss over. I don't have to worry, oh my gosh, I didn't look at the plant every 5 days. So understanding your schedule, that's really important because there are some plants that are going to need a little bit more attention. And this will go into attentiveness as well. So let's say you don't have a crazy schedule, but maybe you rather focus your attentions elsewhere. And this is not something where you want to have plants that you, again, want to fuss over. You want to be able to be laid back, not worry about them. Or maybe you want to give them your full attention, right? You can be on the complete other side of the spectrum. You work from home. That's what you want to do. Maybe this is very relaxing. This is a very nurturing hobby for sure. So maybe this is what you want to devote all your time to. So trying to be more, I want to be more focused. I want to be more mindful. I want to focus on plants. I do not mind if it's a plant that needs that type of kind of helicopter parenting, then you want to do that. So it's really important to find your wheelhouse, right? Where do you fall in that spectrum? And then understanding as well, maybe you really want to be attentive, but what are responsibilities you might have, right? If you're a parent, maybe you have multiple jobs or your responsibilities are there. And realistically, even though you want to maybe give the plants a lot of attention, just know, okay, yeah, I'm basically unavailable 4 times a week, like completely out of the house. So maybe I shouldn't get something that I need to really check on every day or every other day. So just really understanding who you are as a person, your basically your lifestyle. And that is going to help divide out what plants you can get, and especially what plants maybe you shouldn't get. Of course, we're always going to stumble upon a plant that we find absolutely gorgeous. We don't even know what it is. We see it at the store and then we get it and then we find out, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? I just purchased this plant. Maybe I spent like $50 on this plant and I just realized this thing needs a terrarium. It needs supplemental lighting. It needs its own humidifier. I need to be on top of it. Like every other day, I need to be checking on this plant, and that's not what I meant to sign up for. And then you have decisions to make, right? So just things to think about. Then understanding your location. And so A couple things here. So one is obviously your climate, right? This is definitely going to change your plant selection. This is also going to change what plants might be available in your area, understanding frost dates, heat zones. So what are these extremes, right? Maybe you live in an area that's prone to getting incredibly hot. Maybe it's prone to drought, right? So this is especially important for your outdoor gardens. But what does this mean for your indoor spaces? So it might mean if you don't have, let's say, central heating or central air conditioning, then your inside, right, the interior of your home definitely is affected by what's happening outside. It's not something that's consistent. So thinking about these types of things. Also, maybe you have a porch and you want to be able to put your plants outdoors for part of the growing season. Really important to know those frost dates, really important to understand those heat zones, because maybe it has the capacity to get so hot that certain plants will go into shock. They can easily burn up. There are certain plants that, let's say, don't want to go past, let's say, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, right? They don't want to get past that point. And if you were to leave them outside, completely forget, maybe you went on a day trip and it just happens that day, it was like the hottest day of the week, and now your plants are in trouble, right? Even the same with frost dates. So understanding when the frost will come. It's always a rule of thumb to, if it says, let's say the last frost is set to be at the end of March, let's just say, always add 2 to 3 weeks after that. And if it says that it's going to start, the temperature is going to drop on a certain date, judge 2 to 3 weeks before that. Because sometimes these things come early and sometimes they continue past the point of the prediction. So to be safe, add these buffer times. If you think, okay, yeah, it's going to be safe, totally safe to put my plants out in April, for instance, it says that the last frost is going to be on April 27th, then add 2 to 3 more weeks to that. It's usually here in the States. I know here in the Northeast, for instance, like after Mother's Day is a safer time to put out a lot of our tropical house plants to lower that risk of potential frost. But you never know. We've had some late frosts here. Our neighbor had gorgeous magnolia tree and we got an unexpected frost. It's just out of nowhere. And that poor tree went from gorgeous pink blooms to everything was brown. So it can happen. So giving yourself those little buffers are going to be really helpful in the long run. Another thing to consider is ownership. This is often something where a lot of folks might go, huh? What are you talking about? So rental spaces, for one. And this is apparently a thing, there are some leases. Now, it's not something that's incredibly popular, but it is occurring where there are some leases that say you can't keep the indoor temperature or humidity at a certain percentage, or they might even have a limit as to how many plants you can have in the home. There's even certain restrictions, like, yes, you can put plants out on the balcony or on the porch, or no, you can't. Sometimes the concerns have to do with water damage, right? Any water staining, water damage, soil, like mess soil. There is that belief that plants can attract pests. It's not the case, but that is a often common belief, that it attracts bugs and things like that. And then also in terms of ownership, if it's a rental property, that might limit your ability to, let's say, put up hanging plants or install shelves or things like that. This is something you might want to consider. If it's your own space, you can do whatever you want. But if it's a rental, make sure what the stipulations are in your lease so that you're not getting yourself in trouble. For instance, we rent this apartment. I've lived in this apartment, but a lot of these we have white walls, and then I have a bunch of these decals. These are vinyl stick decals. They're basically giant stickers, and I have them all around to add pops of color, but they are easily removable. They're not going to damage the paint. So sometimes you can do these fun little DIY things and it won't damage the home. Again, if you're not allowed to make, some leases even have amount of screws you're allowed to put in the walls. So things like that you might want to think about before, if you want to really install like a huge shelf system, for instance. And then think about obstructions. Sometimes you might have you have windows, you have gorgeous windows, great lighting, everything's perfect. But just think about what if you have a building in front of your home, right? That's going to definitely change up the amount of light that you're getting. Also, for instance, I always like to use an example of a previous client who had a neighbor who had one of those retractable awnings. And during the summers, their neighbor and the family would love to go out like around 4 or 5 p.m. and just take out the awning, and she would completely lose any light on that side of the house because the awning would come out, completely block everything out, and her whole living room would basically it was like about to be night, and she had to install supplemental lighting. There was no choice in the matter that would automatically turn on around that time just in case that was happening. Think about these sometimes they're weird situations. So things to think about. Understanding your space as well. Where are your windows situated? Do you have surface area around those windows? How high are your ceilings? A lot of plants, something like there's a bird of paradise in this photo, for instance. Some of these plants get incredibly tall. A fiddly fig can get really tall. It can easily outgrow your space. Sometimes, yes, some of these plants grow at a really slow pace, so they won't be an issue while others grow at a pretty rapid pace. You might end up going, oh my gosh, this thing is a monster. How do I move this? It becomes an impossibility, right? You end up having to chop it off, or you decide, hey, I can't keep this here. I need to give it away. Things to think about. Do you want to invest in a plant that then it might end up outgrowing your space and you're going to have to either sell it? Maybe that's the plan, right? Yeah, I want to enjoy it, and then it gets big enough where I can sell it. If that's the plan, perfectly fine. But check these things before purchasing some plants, right? Because you want to make sure it's not going to outgrow your space. And then understanding also the shapes of plants. So for instance, there are some plants that are going to grow upright, right? If you have plants that grow on poles, for instance, then they're gonna stay relatively compact. That's great. It's going to be upward growth. But then there's some plants that grow outward and then you have to figure that out. So do you have the space around that plant? Certain things like Monstera deliciosa. What's another good example? Oh, Thematophyllum bipenifolium too. The leaves are really beautiful, huge. Also a plant that grows wide. And there's also like philodendrons that also grow really wide. For instance, here we go. I'll show you here. This is our Chaco Red. And this thing is a monster. It's in front of me. It's behind my computer. But you can see this thing is huge. Look at the size of these leaves and look at the way it grows completely outward. So yes, it is something that we had to make sure we could place comfortably. Now to set this back down, 1 second. We have to place it in a place where we're not constantly smacking it. Right now, it's the entire width of my desk. So it's on one corner of my desk, but one leaf is perfectly on one end and the other leaf reaches out to the other. So the whole front part of my desk is unavailable to me at this point because it's completely that wide. So things to think about. Then do you have shelves? What kind of surface areas do you have? Are you able to do hanging plants? If you are, there's plenty of options. There you can install tubing. You can do similar to the shower tubes. You can totally do that. That's really helpful. You can there are plant hooks that you can put on your ceiling. There's also retractable ones too that are really neat. I have two. I have to install them. I'm excited to play around with those. But basically you can just take the plant and you pull it down and then it clicks. So you can do what you need to do to the plant, water it, whatever you need to do. And then you pull it down, you do a click and it takes it back up. I have quite a few hanging plants. What I use is a hook on a stick, same as folks use in clothing stores. If you recognize the pole with the hook to get the clothes, I have one of those for my plants because I am short. I can't always reach and get that down. Retractable hooks are definitely something I had to add to my collection here. There's always new tools coming out, so definitely take advantage of that. Also floor space. So there are some plants, right? They're going to need to be on the floor. They're maybe too tall. There's something too heavy, right? You You don't have a table that's going to support that weight. So you're going to have to put it on the floor. And where is that going to be? Do you have that space? Maybe you want to have a whole collection of plants on the floor. Another consideration is, do you have pets? A lot of these plants are toxic. So if you don't want to you want to make sure they're not accessible to your pets, to small children, something that could potentially put them at risk. So also knowing, what space do I have? But now, okay, wait, I have a new puppy. I can't have this accessible. I need to either put this in a room the puppy's not allowed in, or I need to put all these toxic plants on higher shelves. And that would be a whole other thing, because maybe you now won't get as good light, right? The situation might dramatically shift if you put it somewhere where, okay, yeah, now it's inaccessible, but now it's not in front of the window. So now I have to install lighting. These are all things to think about. And then understanding your parameters. Hey, how do I have a consistent temperature indoors? Getting humidity gauges, temperature humidity gauges, highly recommend. I have them all around the house. So I have some that are magnetic. And so this one was stuck here. So you're able to see, oh, here we go. Here's the camera. You can definitely keep it that way. Oh, whoops, I had it upside down. There you go. Having it accessible, putting them in different parts of your home, because it's going to be different depending on where it's placed, right? Where your plants are. By my window, completely different in terms of the temperature, in terms of how much humidity is there. Vastly different than this area across the room. Plants that are over here, farther away even from the window space. Again, completely different temperature. Humidity is a couple numbers off here. All the way over there, completely different. Recognizing that different areas, which I like to call mine plant zones. Basically, these zones are their own little microclimate. Having gauges in each space, and they don't have to be expensive. These right now are probably my favorite. But I get these, and it's usually 2 for $7. So these are great. But I like them too because they have the option to stand up, or there's the magnet. Some of them that I have on the wall, I actually put a command strip on it and just plop it on the wall. That's also another option. But that's just great to keep an eye on things. And because certain plants, again, are going to want certain percentages of humidity. If it gets too dry, they start to turn brown, they get all crispy, and then they lose those leaves. The same understanding also your air circulation. What's your air situation? Do you keep your windows closed? So maybe your air is much more stagnant. There isn't a lot of circulation. That can increase the likelihood for one, getting large accumulations of dust on the leaves. Things like spider mites, so does mold as well. If you're keeping your home relatively cool, stagnant air, really low air circulation, and maybe you're like, oh, I have all these tropical plants, I'm going to up my humidity. That in itself, that little situation there, that's great for mold. So no air moving around, nice cool temperature and high moisture. They're going to go crazy. So understanding, okay, maybe I shouldn't have these types of plants, or maybe I should have windows open, maybe have a fan on. These are things that can be remedied rather easily and inexpensively. And then lighting and exposures. There are different, we'll do a whole class on lighting exposures, but just a little run through. Basically, when of course, this is for the northern hemisphere. I believe it's like backwards for the southern, but for us, northern light is the softest type of light. It's not strong enough for a lot of species. It's okay for plants that kind of like shadier situations, things like ferns. They don't mind northern light. Our strongest one is southern light. And again, this is for the northern but for the southern light, and that's really intense. That can actually burn a lot of plants. There are other plants that are incredibly happy in that light, but that's the most intense. So then we go from northern to eastern. This seems to be a really nice spot for like tropical species. A lot of plants really like eastern light, but it's not strong enough for a lot of succulents, for instance. Now, it's okay for rainforest cacti, for things like the holiday cacti, Thanksgiving cacti, Christmas cacti, Easter cacti. They like an eastern window. But western window, Again, getting a little bit stronger here, especially towards the evening, the light can get really intense. So you might need something like a sheer curtain. Same thing with the southern exposure. You might need a sheer curtain to diffuse that light a little bit. Things to think about. What kind of exposure do I have? And is this going to be sufficient for the plant? If you don't provide enough light to the plant, it can start to decline. For a lot of succulents, for instance, they will actually start to stretch. And this process is called etiolation. If you've had Echeveria, little succulents that kind of look like a rose at the beginning, really growing close to the ground, and then all of a sudden it becomes this really tall kind of gangly thing. And that's actually because it's not getting sufficient amount of light. So it's stretching in order to find better access to light. And the last thing with parameters is just your water type. Be of what kind of water your plant's going to need. There are some species like carnivorous species, for instance, that would want like distilled water. Some plants actually thrive with rainwater if you are able to collect that in your area. I know there are some areas, counties, states where it's illegal to actually collect rainwater. Make sure you double check that before proceeding with collecting rainwater. But then there's also plants that will do much better with spring water, especially plants like prayer plants, even air plants. So air plants, I like to dunk mine in spring water. Distilled water is often recommended, but it lacks any minerals or anything. They will start to do a little poorly after a while. Using spring water is great. And then knowing, okay, what pH, if you're going to use your tap water. Some plants don't mind the tap water, but knowing your pH is going to make a difference. So if your pH is close to neutral, which is 7, it's fine. But let's say you're prone to having your area gets really acidic water or really alkaline water. Certain plants prefer one or the other. And so that could really start to affect the plant after a while. The same thing with hardness. Some plants, when we talk about water hardness, like soft water, hard water, it's talking about the amount of mineralization basically in the water. Some plants are sensitive to that. So making sure you educate yourself about your local water supply. There are water reports. There should be water reports of every area. You can go on Google and put in your area code, and it tends to pull that information up for you. And it's really helpful in the long run, especially if you're getting into the realm of some more sensitive plants and knowing, okay, I'm going to end up having to buy water for this whole part of my collection. I think that's really important. And this leads into this is understanding the investment, right? So if you're getting plants, they're going to need specific type of water. That's going to be at cost to you. You're going to have to purchase that water on a routine basis. Also, the plants themselves, it can get very addictive. So many of you might know, you start with 1, that turns into 10, that will eventually turn into 100. Here in our home, we have over 300. We do have quite a few. And it can get to that point where you're just like, yeah, I want to collect a bunch of these different species. Some of them are pretty inexpensive. And I think that makes them more dangerous because then you're like, oh my gosh, I can get all of these plants for $20. And so that's definitely happened to me. And then any tools you might need. Different species need different types of substrate. There isn't one type of plant substrate, right? Like a soil mix or a potting mix that works for every single species. It's just not. It doesn't exist. So you sometimes need to make your own substrate. We make all our own mixes here because, again, we have plants that prefer to have wet feet, which is in reference to they like a lot of extra moisture, while other plants want to completely dry out. There are plants here that we have that grow typically in the wild in trees or on rocks. They definitely don't want to be sitting in soil that's like mud to them. They want something with that air can really circulate through, that doesn't make them feel compressed, that doesn't deoxygenate their roots, basically. Things to think about. Then, of course, any nutrition. So some plants need very specific types of fertilizers. If you have a plant in water, you're going to need types of fertilizers that actually are soluble in water and are meant for hydroponic kind of setups, right? This is when plants are being kept just in water. Then there's other types that are urea free, some that have higher nitrogen K levels. We'll have a whole class on that, on understanding what is fertilizer and how does it work. These have different levels and plants prefer the different levels. So making sure that you're getting the right types, and that might mean you need to get 4 or 5 different types of fertilizers, right? It can get very expensive. Understanding the tools, right? You want to have a dedicated pair of scissors, especially if you have toxic plants. You don't want this to be your kitchen scissors, right? Definitely not. Some plants also have sap that can be very corrosive. You don't necessarily want it to be your pair of office scissors, because then they're just going to be incredibly damaged. And also cross-contamination. You don't want to introduce potential pathogens, right? Molds, bacteria, viruses to your plants. You want to have a dedicated pair of scissors that you spray with rubbing alcohol before and after use. And then that's just for your plants. It sticks to your plants. Then pest management. What if you need to get horticultural oils or sprays, or you need to buy other beneficial insects, right? Here, we don't like to use any sprays. For one, we have our pet insects. We actually have quite a few. We have a lot of invertebrates in our home. We have like spiders and things like that we purposely keep as pets. I don't want anything sprayed that could potentially damage, hurt them, anything like that. We like to use integrated pest management. That means we introduce ladybugs to the home, lacewings, nematodes. So different types of little critters, basically, of invertebrates that then are able to eat any of the pests that might be on the plants. So I don't have to spray in our plants. It's a much better ecosystem. And then, of course, the cost of displays. If you're going to be buying shelves, if you're going to be having to buy, I have something, I'm going to do a whole class on that, but I have carts that I have plants on that are completely set up for plants. Different fun ways that you can display your plants, but that is at cost for you. Sometimes there are great DIYs, right? You can get reclaimed materials. You don't have to spend any money at all. It's just your time and your creativity, but it is an investment as well of your time. And then supplemental equipment. What if you don't have the best lighting? Maybe you live in a sub-basement, right? You barely get any sunlight, but you really want to have plants. You will have to purchase maybe some types of grow lights. That might add, not a lot, but it might add some cost to your electricity bill. Then if you have set up a system, let's say for irrigation, maybe you have a hydroponic system, this kind of controls how much water, and it does all the watering for you. Something else you have to work on. And then humidifiers too. If you have come from a very dry climate, so you have your home stays really dry, especially in winter, can get really dry in the home. Having to purchase those humidifiers and then keep them on. Again, a little bit more for your electricity bill. It's not substantial. It's not like hundreds of dollars or anything, but I might notice like a $20, $30 difference when you have these types of things. Having that kind of pre-understood, right, is going to be really helpful. I do want to just mention, I'm going to answer, I see a bunch of questions in the chat, so I'm going to get to those. But next week, it's just going to be a Q&A. So please of course, ask your questions now. We have plenty of time, but next week it'll just be a Q&A. So come prepared to ask your questions, please. It's just going to be a nice laid back Q&A. This class is completely free at cost, I bring this happily to you every week. If you would like to offer a tip or anything like that, it's more than welcome. Not necessary at all. Not necessary. But I do want to just put that there just in case. Of course, it's completely up to you. This class will continue to be free. I am not going to ever make it at cost. So please don't worry about that. But yes, if you're interested in sending a tip, if you liked a little bit of what you learned, you're more than welcome to. Again, completely not necessary. If you would like to get more information, maybe, hey, what are your other class offerings? Anything like that. I'm currently setting up, there's going to be a whole new offering list and a bunch of different classes and on topics surrounding botany, on herbalism. Those are hopefully going to be up in the next week or so on the website on urbangarden.eco. If you do have any follow-up questions, if you have to head out now, you can definitely reach out at info@urbangarden.eco. I'm also on Instagram if that is of interest, and the website is right there for you to check out. So plenty of things in the chat. So one second, let me go through here. And again, no, you don't need to put yourself on camera if you wouldn't like to. You're perfectly fine. But it's a great chance for me to welcome quite a few of you. Judy, hello. Paulette, yes. We have Stephanie, hello, hello. Sue. Oh, wonderful. Sue has a pair of mourning doves that frequently visit her patio. And I'm glad you like the shift to Zoom. And Betty's saying, getting ready to make cuttings from some of my houseplants. So yes, I'm wishing you all the luck, all the planty luck your way, definitely. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra. Oh, LC, thank you so much. LC attended my walk at the Ridgewood Reservoir. I am a guide and educator with NYC H2O. It's all about urban ecology, understanding and appreciating our waterways. And I'm so glad that you joined in. When is the next plant walk? Good question. So I'm currently setting up those dates. I'm trying to get everything, all the scheduling done this week. I do want to put up a few more dates. I just had a walk last Tuesday. And yeah, I'm going to be setting up quite a few throughout the summer. They're here in New York City. So if you happen to be visiting or in the area, please come. And there's always different places. Forest Park in Queens, a lot of places in Queens, Alley Pond, but there's also Central Park. It's always a fan favorite, as well as Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx, Prospect Park in Brooklyn. So always a new location. I like to switch it up. And if you have a good location that you're interested in me coming to that's within New York City, yeah, please let me know. I'm happy to show up and do a plant walk. By all means, I'm always eager to learn new places. And Elsie shared the NYC H2O event page. Yes, definitely check that out. So many great things. They also offer quite a few student classes. So they actually visit schools, and we've been doing virtual classes for schools lately, but yeah, there's in-person tours and things like that as well. Let's see here. Gerard, yes, this is the new one. The old one is gone. Yes. Yes, I had to make that shift. I think there was just a lot of technical issues with that platform. I wasn't getting told when people were registering. People weren't getting replays. It was just a mess. I was like, you know what? Yeah, thanks, Gerard. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I think it would just be if I would be able to just control this myself. It was really frustrating. I felt like it was doing a disservice to my students, definitely a disservice to me. I'd show up wanting to teach, and sometimes their audio wouldn't work or nobody got the link. And nobody would know that the class was happening. I'm very happy that we were able to just do the shift and transition. So thank you, thank you. You may also need more than one day to get all of your plants in, Sue says. Yes, oh, absolutely. There's definitely, and when changing the location, let's say bringing plants indoors to out, vice versa, that's a transitional process in itself. You definitely want to acclimate your plants. If a few of you might know what this means, but basically you're going to want to bring plants in also for a couple hours and then put them back where they were. And this works when you're moving them out onto your porch, into your backyard, and also vice versa, bringing them back in for, let's say, the winter season is right around the bend. So doing that couple hours a day, and this can be a process that can end up taking 10 days, even 2 weeks or so, just to really make sure that the plants don't go into shock. Because what happens is if you take your plant, so if I were to grab this, let me see here, grab this guy, have him here, he's really happy, I put him outside, I really run the risk, and I leave them there. I run the risk of it completely burning up. That can really happen because you're changing everything, right? Putting it outside, completely new environment, it has to acclimate. So this is how plants, they get used to their situation. So plants are, for the most part, immobile, right? Yes, they have the capacity to move their leaves and things like that, but for the most part, they're staying in one place. As houseplants, they get used to living in one environment and they tune themselves. So they know what to expect. They will shift even their hormones, like auxins and things that regulate where the plant grows and bends and things like that. That's all shifted to work within that current situation. So if you go and take the plant and bring it outside, it's completely new environment, it can shock the plant. So the plant goes, okay, I'm not prepared. The sun is coming from that direction. What's happening? And it actually can end up harming the plant. Some plants will literally faint, and it's just they go into shock. It's just, and plants can get like heat exhaustion. Basically, they get way too hot. They lose water way too quickly, and they look like they deflate basically. And this can totally happen. It's the same with cold, right? You leave the plants out really quick. It's been nice 70, 75 degrees Fahrenheit in your home, and then you bring them outside, and all of a sudden that night it drops to 30s, right? And your plant is not prepared. And maybe it's a plant that is not frost tolerant. There are plants that just can't deal with any cold whatsoever, especially not frost. And then you lose your plants that way. It's a process. It's definitely a process. And Carol Sue mentions that she can't put heavy things on her balcony. Yes. So even when you're placing plants like that, knowing, are you allowed to, maybe structurally, can you even do so? Move plants. Maybe you can't put a soil, right? Let's say plants that are in soil, they get heavy when they're watered. If you have any plants that are in really big pots and you water them, it might be easy to bring it to get watered at first. You can totally lift it, but once it's completely saturated with water, it's a 2-person job. You can't lift it. So understanding that shift in weight, and hey, can my patio even hold that capacity? Or can my balcony even hold that capacity? Or will my landlord kill me if I put things past a certain capacity? Please know this. All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming. What do you use to measure light? Teresa asks. Yes, good question. A couple things. There are light meters that you can purchase. There are some that are relatively cheap. There are some combination moisture light meters. Those are fun as well. But yes, there's options to actually buy a specialized tool that you can hold up, and it will tell you how strong your lighting is. And that can be very helpful. Another option, there are some apps. So there are some apps that you can get on smartphones where it uses your camera. You basically go into the app and you open up your camera basically through the app, and it registers how much light is coming from that direction. That's probably the most accessible way to do it. That doesn't involve going out and purchasing a brand new tool, like a light meter for you to use. So there are apps, and that can be very helpful. Another way, there are certain like tips and tricks. I know understanding, for instance, if your plant, let's say, likes like bright indirect light, understanding shadows. If the light isn't bright enough, you're not going to get a shadow. If, for instance, if you put your hand up by the wall and you're not even seeing a shadow, it's so dim, that's a good way to know also, okay, maybe this isn't bright enough for my philodendron or something like that. Other plants might really like that, like ferns. A lot of ferns, they live in that, usually on the undergrowth, right? They like that tree canopy. So they don't want direct sun, but they want really soft light. That's totally fine. But knowing which plant fits in which category and understanding where the plants come from, their ecosystems, that really helps. That goes a long way when placing your plants too. A lot of our plants that we have placed together, some plants that want a little bit more shade, I will actually put them under another plant. They're next to the plant, but the larger plant that wants more light is basically covering it, and it kind of mimics what would happen in the wild with that layering. It's fun to do as well, but you can do that too. I could use my pool water test to see the pH balance for my home for the pool water tester. Yeah, I believe that should be sufficient to at least get an idea for if you're checking like pH, especially, or hardness. I know, yeah, so using the pool water test, that should be fine. I'm not sure if they are skewed a little bit to compensate for the fact that there are kind of chemicals that are in the pool that might alter, it'll be a different reading. But for the most part, it should at least tell you the pH, definitely, of your household water. You can do that. pH tests, thankfully, are really inexpensive. So you can definitely do that. Also, Googling gives you an average, right? Googling might give you an average. If you put what's the pH in my area, it'll give you a little bit of an average if you just want to know real quick. But yes, water testers, like they can come in little strips. Totally great. If you have an aquarium and you have a pH test already, that's even better, more accessible too. Okay, Gabby, I collect water in my dehumidifier in the musty basement. that I empty regularly. I've been told that the water can be used for plants. Is that true? Yes and no. So yes, if you're emptying it regularly, and if the little canister, basically the reservoir that you're emptying out, is kept relatively clean. If you were to let it get slimy and it starts to get a little murky, that can actually let you know that there's some bacterial growth, or even there are types of molds that grow on the surface of water. As long as it's nice and clean, that's perfectly fine. Absolutely, you can totally use that water. It's just if that little reservoir starts to get slimy or weird, definitely don't add that to your plants because you could be introducing something. But yes, you can. We have a dehumidifier in our bathroom. Perfectly fine. Just make sure that reservoir is kept squeaky clean and you're perfectly good. And Arlene, I brought coleus to want to put it outside where there's full sun. Should I take it out of the pot until winter and bring it back in mid-fall? Okay, so you're asking if you want to plant it in the ground during the growing season and then bring it in during the fall. Okay, so a couple things with coleus. With coleus, I have found that their roots can be a little sensitive. I mean, you could, I do know there are some folks that will bring in some of their garden plants over the winter. I'm trying to recall, I know coleus is related to mints, but I can't recall. I think it is a perennial. So I think it will continue to come back. If that is the case, and sometimes there are some species that fall within a family that are perennials and some are just annuals, right? They last one season, flower, seed, and they're done. Their life cycle is complete. Others will keep returning. If it's something that is, if you see, okay, yes, this variety definitely, it's a perennial, you can just leave it because it'll continue to come back when you have those perennials. It depends, of course, on your region. Sometimes if your area gets way too cold during the winter, that might kill the root. And then a lot of plants that are perennials may actually act as annuals in your climate. If you're going to be moving in and out, I would say keep it in a pot. That'll probably be the easiest thing, because when you do transplant it back, that's going to be really stressful on the roots and they're about to go into dormancy. The thing too is if you bring it inside and it's supposed to die back and go dormant, sometimes being indoors, you have climate control, you have lighting, it might actually make it continue on throughout the winter. That can end up happening as well. Yeah, so that you're aware of that. And we are in that somebody mentioned about Gabby. Yes, if you are registered for the class, then yes, every week you'll get a weekly reminder to let you know. The same with where to find replays if you'd like. If there are any signups, like for the plant clinic, if you say, hey, here's the sign up sheet, it's first come, first serve. So as soon as it's filled out, then those are the spaces for that week. But yeah, and any information about the class, yes, you will be getting reminders and weekly email. I'll try to restrict it to that once a week so that you're not inundated with a bunch of content being thrown your way. And let's see here. Yes, and someone was mentioning the Facebook Live. Yes, we were trying to do the Facebook Live and we had tested it yesterday and it worked. And of course, when I try to do it now, it doesn't. We'll get that figured out because I know that I think once I reach a certain capacity on the Zoom, that it will basically lock other people out, won't let them in. And so I want to make sure that I make that accessible to everyone. So yeah, we'll get that figured out so that if that were to happen, everyone has that kind of backup if they did want to join in on Facebook. Let's see here. Oh, and speaking of replay access, is the process the same or different now? Yes, so they will be available on the website. You will receive a replay link, and then you will so there'll be a replay link available in the email. I'm going to host the replays on the website, and they will also be posted into the Facebook group. So there's going to be different ways. And since we're kicking off this kind of first one here, then I will also be creating a list. It's going to be a PDF, and then the first one will be available next week. So it has at least this first class on there. And then you can click on that PDF every week and it'll be updated. There'll be different ways of getting those replays. I'm going to try to make it very accessible to everyone. Sandra, yes, a much better platform and stress-free. Absolutely. Thank you. Let's see here. Yes. So Doug, yes. We are going to set up the reminder emails to let everybody know when this is happening. And yes, so we'll set that up so that it gives you the reminders and notice and things like that. A webinar isn't going to let anyone know what's going on right now. So yeah, I'm having to tell everyone the updates. And let's see here. Coleus, they like bright light, but they have very thin leaves, so they can't deal with really intense bright light. I've seen a lot of them start to crisp and get burned, but depending on your exposure. So like southern light might be a little bit too strong for them. But yeah. And let's see here. Judy, has Webinar Jam sent you all the recordings? I checked the other day and it ends at 86. Yes. So I was finally able to get my recordings from Webinar Jam. Deborah, how do you care for a jade plant? Good question. Jade plants, for those of you who might not know, if you might know it as Crassula. Yes, it's a plant that is very popular. A lot of folks have them. The issue is that it's a plant that the common name can be really confusing because some people call like the jade pothos, oh, that's the jade plant. Or they also call things like portulacarias, which is an elephant bush. They can call it jade plant too. But when we're talking about Crassula ovata, just so that it's very specific, with these guys, they're very forgiving. These plants are very forgiving. They do not like really intense sunlight. I wouldn't put it in a southern window. If it's in a western window during the earlier part of the day, it's pretty good. But in the evening, you might want to pull it away or put down a curtain because the light can get pretty intense. It can start to burn them. They like eastern windows. Eastern windows are really nice location. They do tend to blush on the ends. So on the corners of the leaves, they start to turn like a burgundy, like a really pretty red. And so that is usually happens when they're in a really nice lighting situation. However, if they're getting too much light, the whole plant will turn orange. They will start to turn a red, which indicates blushing, basically. Blushing is when the plant is trying to protect itself from burning, and it actually starts to release like these antioxidants, these anthins, and these appear like on that spectrum of pink to orange to red. If you see your plant turning full color like that into succulent, it tends to mean it's blushing. So this is usually remedied by just pulling it away from that light source, pulling it away, putting a sheer curtain, something that will lessen the amount of light that it's getting, and it should start to turn green again. Don't worry about that. But these are great plants. If they're really tiny, you might find yourself watering them once a week, like every 7 to 10 days or so. But if you have a nice size established plant, these can tend to get watered. And I like bottom watering my jades. I have quite a few jades. I have some big ones, I have little ones, but I like bottom watering them and it's about every 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks. They're pretty low maintenance plants and they're very quick to propagate. So you're able to get a lot of babies out of them. You can propagate them through the little leaves themselves, or if sometimes pieces will actually fall and they'll have these little roots already, you can just plop them right at the base and it'll continue to grow. Yeah. Oh, Arlene missed the answer about the coleus. Yeah, if you're going to keep it if you want to be moving it back and forth, I would say to just keep it in the pot. It's just going to make it easier and also limits the potentiality of also introducing pests and mold and things like that to your home as well. If you're bringing it outdoor substrate, basically indoors, there might be things that are in that substrate that then you end up sharing with your other houseplants. Not that they won't get in there. It's a little less if you're taking it directly from the ground versus having a pot that's going in and out. Let's see here. I'm happy to take, if anyone else has any more questions, happy to stay on for like another 10, 15 minutes or so. So feel free to put anything in the chat. Again, for those of you, if you tuned in late, next week we'll just do a Q&A. So it's just a hangout, ask your question. I will be sending out a sign-up sheet for plant clinic days. So if you have a specific plant, for instance, that is struggling and you want to learn a little bit more about what might be going on or how to address the situation, we're going to have a sign-up sheet, and then folks can come and show their plant, and you can join into for if you want to see if maybe you have a similar situation happening at home. and you're able to check out as we do an assessment, what's going on, what can you do, any tips or tricks to help remedy the issue. Yeah, I'll be sending out a sign up sheet so we can do that. And let's see, what can I say about a hanging begonias are great. There are some begonias that actually do vine. With these, you want to make sure that you're not, while they do again, some begonias appreciate bright light, but not intense light. You want to just really be careful that you're not burning them. Definitely keeping the humidity levels up. Begonias will very much appreciate that. Avoiding misting the leaves. So not all begonias, but a lot of begonias have kind of very velvety leaves, and this can actually hold onto water droplets. And so this becomes an issue because it can cause rot basically on some of the leaves. So being careful with that, definitely important. And let's see here. And yeah, it depends. So some begonias, so there are like cane begonias, for instance, they can actually go a little bit longer without water. So you can find yourself watering them maybe every 10 days or so. Smaller begonias, much more fragile, the Amphioxus or things like that, those you might end up having to actually water a little bit more often. And of course, if your home gets really warm, you have a lot of bright light in your home, that does make water gets used much faster that way too. And in the winter, a lot of your plants, they're not using up water as quickly as they usually do. It changes with the seasons because, again, the amount of light, heat, temperature, humidity. So this will affect how much water usage your plant is, the degrees of water usage. So kind of learning that is going to be really helpful in catching those changes. So it really depends. I bought 2 new plants. Do you recognize them? Let's see here. I'm going to... Let's see here, spotlight. Here we go. That is a Peperomia obtusifolia. So that's a very peperomia. And this is one of my favorite things to do, guys, is to identify plants. And that is a rubber plant. So that is a variegated rubber plant. Yeah, so it could be a Ficus elastica. But yes, so that is a rubber plant. That's in the fig family. And the peperomia here, yes, I believe they're in the Piperaceae family, the pepper family. And these guys the peperomias do have that succulent leaf. Just be very mindful. They don't like to stay moist all the time. And Gabby, you must be fluent in Latin. Not fluent, no, I'm still learning a lot, but it helps that I am bilingual, so I do speak Spanish. And thankfully, that has helped me greatly with the botanical Latin. This is a favorite thing for me, a favorite pastime is identifying plants and remembering their botanical names. Yes, I am happy to identify plants. Oh, yes, Holly, yeah?
Do you water them every 2 weeks or something?
So with the peperomias, yes, you can water peperomias. It depends on how fast they're drying out. But with the peperomia, you might find yourself watering it every 10 days or so. Now, if it's drying out super fast, if you start to see that it starts to faint in a way, like it starts to get floppy, that might mean that it's thirsty again. So you just double check that it's actually dry, give it a good watering. Sometimes that can be it ends up being about a 10-day sweet spot, but it's different depending on everybody's home. But I will guesstimate with that because my peperomias, it tends to be like for the more succulent ones, it's about 10 days or so. For the thinner ones, you might find yourself doing that weekly. For the rubber plant, the rubber tree, that guy, yeah, that's going to need probably about once a week. They also do like to dry out. So if it's still wet after 7 days, you can wait a few more days, but they don't want to completely dry out. The peperomias don't mind completely drying out, but they're great. Both will, if you have an eastern window, they'll be very happy. And yeah, like I have my peperomia obtusifolia in my southeast window, loves it. Definitely like bright light. With our southeastern windows, we have these 2 huge ash trees in front. So it really lessens that intensity of that light. So a lot of our plants that would otherwise not be okay in any type of southern exposure in the southeastern window, they're actually doing really well because we have that kind of protection. But yeah, so I hope that helps. Okay. Let me see here. And let's see, Judy, is it good practice to top dress all of your indoor house plants? So I wouldn't say all of them, and it depends on what you're using to top dress them. If you use moss, for instance, to top dress your plants. If you use stones as well, that can also grab and hold in moisture. So if your plants don't want that extra kind of locked in moisture, definitely don't top dress them. I would recommend top dressing plants if you really want to. Wicca is really great. It's going to still have that air circulation. It's not going to completely block that whole surface layer. So I have quite a couple plants top dressed with leca. I also have them with crushed leca. That's another option. So it really just depends on the plant because it does lock in moisture. Now it is helpful also for like things like fungus gnats, that it can be really helpful. Not with the moss though. The moss, it will definitely lock in that moisture and increase that likelihood for mold, which is what the fungus gnats are feeding on. So probably not the moss in that situation. Patricia, I just had a plant delivered to me, which I did not order. Can you tell me what it is? Patricia, yes. Let me find you in the gallery view. Here we go. And you didn't order it. Was it added to your order or did someone just send it to you out of
I
nowhere?
think someone just sent it to me, probably for my birthday, because I just celebrated a birthday. So now I have to find out who did this. But I have no idea what kind of plant this is.
Let me see. It looks like a bird of paradise.
That's actually exactly what I did. Quick research and I thought, I think this looks like a bird of paradise. Okay. All right.
Yes.
I
And
have no idea who sent this to me.
that's a wonderful gift.
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
it is. Wow.
And was it shipped? Like, did it arrive in a box?
Yes, it can. I just unboxed it while the class was going on. I unboxed it. I looked at it. I thought, I didn't order this. Where did this come from?
That is great. And the fact that the leaves look really intact, that is wonderful.
Yes.
These are beautiful plants. They can get pretty tall, but these are
Okay.
absolutely gorgeous. Wow, that is a beautiful plant.
I see a couple of little splits or little slits. Is that, it doesn't look as if it was torn. Do their leaves split a little bit?
They usually tend to split if there's any mechanical damage. So if it was frayed, they will
Okay.
also fray and get really stringy. It's the little spaces. It looks like somebody took a scissor and kind of fed them up. That can happen if the humidity isn't high enough.
Okay.
So if
So
you see that your leaves start to do that and they look like somebody took some scissors to them, it means it needs a little bit more humidity.
Okay.
But
All
that's
right.
gorgeous. Good. Best of luck with it. They are
Thank you
beautiful.
so much.
It's gorgeous. Absolutely
Oh.
gorgeous.
Okay.
Let's see. Cheryl, I have two orchids that I was given several years ago. I recently repotted them. After a couple of months, the leaves are turning yellow and dying. I was going to reduce my watering from once a week to every 2 weeks. How do I know if they are still alive, if the leaves all turn to Brassidium, Golden Gamine, and Oncidium Heaven Sent? Oof. Okay, so with orchids, it can be really tricky. What can end up happening is if they were repotted, sometimes if it's a change in regards to the type of pot that was used, so maybe it went from, let's say, terracotta to plastic, it's like a material change, that can change how much moisture is being retained in the container. So if you're like, no, it was the same type of container, both plastic to plastic or terracotta to terracotta, then that's not the issue, but it can happen, just so folks are aware. Also, the type of substrate. You might have gotten a substrate that maybe retained a little bit more moisture that can be happening. The fact that they're turning yellow and dying tells me there's something that's holding on a little bit more moisture. If it's used orchid bark, was it the same material that it was in previously? So that's what was used, or did you use it from a different plant? If you used it from a different plant, like it was in another pot and you transplanted that and used that, so it's same type from a new bag. It could be that there was something already in that material. So there are types of molds, for instance, it could be bacterial. So the fact that the leaves are yellow and dying, so it makes me think moisture retention or potential pathogen. With regards to how do I know if it's still alive? What you can do, if you have, so some orchids, yes, it can lose the leaves and it's fine as long as you have the main roots. It just takes a little bit of time, of course, but just try to make sure that the main stem and the roots that you do have are not squishy. They're not feeling like jelly or anything. They're nice and thick. You can, if you see that the leaves are completely turning yellow, there's no green left, it might be better to just cut them off. You can do that. Just make sure you're using a pair of scissors that has been sprayed with rubbing alcohol. So as long as that main kind of stem at the base where the kind of roots kind of flare out, if that section is nice and solid and green, that should mean that it's okay. If the whole thing is soft and squishy, it might not be good. Some orchids, they get like a brownish tint at the base, and it's completely normal. To know if the tissue's alive, you can also do the scratch test. So this entails using your nail, making sure your fingers are clean, of course, wash your hands, but you can actually scrape a little surface of a little piece of the stem, and it should be green underneath. And that's a great indicator. And that works with a lot of plants. So especially, let's say, like folks that have fiddly figs, that like tree kind of house plants that end up losing all their leaves, and you want to know, is this thing alive? Just do the scratch test. So if you scratch the top layer, just that woody layer, that outward layer, the inside should be green. And if it is, the plant is still alive. If it's brown or mushy or white even, and you go a little bit, there's no green, then the plant is no longer, the vessels are not working, it's gone, unfortunately. Adeline, would an east window with some shading on my deck surrounding be fine? I have to set it side by side up the window. Yeah, so east windows are great. So it just depends on the species. East windows are really great if you have like philodendron, lots of tropical plants, rubber plants, peperomias are gonna like an east window, sansevieria, so like snake plants, totally happy. East windows, I think, is the window you can work with the most. So if you do have an eastern exposure, it really opens up what plants you can have in those exposures. East windows most people dream of east windows. We have a southeast window. So we have to be very careful because some plants do start to burn. So like my husband has his Monstera albos, but he had to pull them because they start to get burned they were fine during the winter, but then as the season changes, the intensity of the sun increases, and so then the white parts start to get damaged. Oh yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. All right, so it is 101. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope that you prefer this format. So thanks, Gerard. Yes. So I hope you prefer this format, and I'll be saving this recording and making it available in different ways. And yeah, I hope that this was informative. I hope that you join in next week for the Q&A. Come with your questions, please. And what I love is that we can also unmute. We can unmute and actually have a conversation, which is wonderful. I get to actually see what's happening and hear your voices. So I really like this. Oh, I'm so happy. Thanks, everyone. It really means a lot. And thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll I see all the waving. Thank you. And I hope, you'll join next time. And same link again. If you have any questions, please reach out. Have a great rest of your Monday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Please be safe. It's very stressful times indeed. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. All right, have a great one. Bye, everyone.